When we talk about World War I, most people think mud, gas masks and endless trenches. But one of the fiercest battles wasn't fought with rifles. It was fought with hunger. Picture the front lines, weeks without resupply, everything soaked in cold muck, and men living in a world where fresh food simply didn't exist. Yet somehow they endured. Not because they had variety or comfort, but because they had one of the simplest, most reliable forms of survival food ever made. A food so basic, it barely qualifies as cooking, yet so effective, it kept entire armies alive. This wasn't about flavour. It was about physics, chemistry, and the brutal science of staying alive. Trench warfare created one of the most hostile environments ever faced by soldiers. Nothing stayed dry, nothing stayed fresh, and supply lines broke as often as morale. Hot meals were a dream. Soldiers needed food that could be carried through mud, stored for months, and eaten cold if necessary. That meant stripping food down to its absolute core, what lasts longest, weighs least, and delivers pure, usable energy. This is where simplicity became genius. Forget gourmet meals. What fed the world's armies were humble rations that obeyed one law of survival. Food must not fail. Every soldier who fought in World War I knew the bite of hardtack, literally. It was a small, dense biscuit made only of flour, water and salt. No yeast, no sugar, no fat. It was so tough you could break a tooth on it if you weren't careful. Troops had to soak it in tea, stew, or even rainwater to make it chewable. But it had one unbeatable quality. It lasted forever. Hardtack didn't spoil. It didn't rot, mould, or attract insects. It could survive a flood, a bombardment, or a decade in storage. In the trenches, where everything else decayed, that made it gold. Soldiers could rely on it to deliver carbohydrates when nothing else would. You can recreate it today with ease. Mix flour, salt, and just enough water to form a stiff dough. Roll it thin, bake it low and slow until bone dry. Once sealed in an airtight container, it can outlast most of your modern pantry. The science behind it is the absence of moisture. No water means no bacteria, no life. And that's exactly what preservation means. For anyone serious about preparedness, this ancient biscuit still earns respect. It's survival food at its most honest form. Reliable, portable, indestructible. While the British and French depended on tinned meat and hardtack, German ingenuity took a different turn with Erbswurst, the pea sausage. It didn't look like much, just a thick greenish roll wrapped in paper, but inside was a high-energy mix of dried pea flour, salt and pork fat. Slice it, boil it, and it became a hot, hearty pea soup packed with protein and calories. The magic here wasn't taste, it was chemistry. Dried peas gave long-lasting carbohydrates and plant protein. Fat added both calories and preservation, sealing out air and moisture. The result? A compact, shelf-stable meal that could survive the wet, freezing trenches without turning rancid. You can actually make your own version at home. Just grind dried split peas into flour, mix that with rendered fat, whether it's animal or plant-based. Add a bit of salt, and shape it all into small bars or rolls. If you wrap them tightly and keep them cool, they'll last for months, honestly. Drop one into boiling water and, well, you've got instant nourishment. It's old-school efficiency and, it's something modern preppers can still learn from. If hardtack was the body of trench food, tinned meat was its muscle. British soldiers swore by bully beef. That's salted corned beef packed in fat and sealed in a tin. It wasn't fancy, but it worked really. The fat created an oxygen barrier, locking freshness inside and keeping bacteria out. That simple idea made it possible to store meat indefinitely, even without refrigeration. You'd open a tin, mix it with crushed hardtack, and there you had it, trench stew. Ugly, filling, and honestly a real morale saver. Those tins weren't just food, they were morale, energy and survival, all compressed into metal. The same principle applies in modern survival, you know. Fat, salt and airtight storage, they're the holy trinity of preservation. Learn them, and you can sustain yourself without a supermarket in sight. Store your food dry. Add salt. Seal it tight. Those rules, well, they outlasted an empire. Soldiers didn't just survive, they adapted. With only hardtack, bully beef and pea sausage, they created improvised meals that, well, kept spirits alive. Trench stew became a staple. Crumble hardtack, add canned meat, mix with condensed milk or tea, and heat it over a small spirit burner. It was crude, but it was warm. That mattered. You can apply the same mindset today. Take a few simple staples, grain, dried peas, jerky, and, experiment outdoors. Boil, mix, soak. Learn how to stretch basic foods into full meals. It's not just practice, it's education. You learn how little you really need to stay strong. This is where survival shifts from theory to skill. Anyone can buy freeze-dried packs. But knowing how to create nourishment from scratch, using the same logic soldiers used in the mud of France, that's mastery. What made these foods legendary wasn't their flavour, it was their dependability. Every army, every nationality leaned on the same three principles: remove water, add salt, seal with fat. That simple formula sustained millions of men through chaos. And that's the message worth carrying forward. In a world of fragile supply chains and instant meals, the World War I soldier's ration teaches us what true food security looks like. Simple ingredients, thoughtful preservation, complete independence from modern systems. Next time you think about emergency prep, don't just stock fancy rations. Make your own hardtack. Render some fat. Try pea flour recipes. Understand why those foods worked, because the moment you do, you're not just storing calories. You're mastering resilience. Simplicity fed the trenches. It fed victory, and it still feeds survivalists today. The men of World War I didn't eat for pleasure, they ate to endure. Their lessons are carved not in recipe books, but in the endurance of those who refused to quit. If you found something valuable in this story of survival science from the Great War, hit that subscribe button and share this video with a fellow history buff or outdoor enthusiast. Because the best lessons in survival weren't written, they were lived. One hardtack biscuit at a time. HistoryHQ